In 2012, Nate Silver's blog 538 predicted all 50 states correctly in the presidential election. Every state that he said Mitt Romney had a greater than 50% chance of winning, Romney won. And every state that he said Obama had a greater than 50% chance of winning, Obama won. Of course, he also said that Hillary Clinton had like a 70% chance of winning the 2016 presidential election, but he's got a super good track record with predicting not only presidential elections, but Senate races and baseball games and football games. So what's his secret? Well, what he does is he looks at statistics, right? So when he predicts presidential elections, he looks at polls. When he predicts baseball games, he looks at won-loss records, etc., etc. It's not a crystal ball, and you're still going to get a lot of stuff wrong, but if you know what to look for in advance, you can give yourself a pretty big edge. However, this works a lot better in some fields than in others, right? So we can predict politics really easily, we can predict baseball fairly easily, we can predict football fairly easily, we can predict the weather fairly easily. We can't predict the economy very easily, we can't predict earthquakes very easily, so what's the difference? Why not? Well, the short answer is statistical modeling works better for some things than for others, and the long answer is Nate Silver's book, The Signal and the Noise. People look at computers and they look at all the crazy stuff that people like Nate Silver can do, and they're like, oh, you know, if you have enough data, then you can predict everything, right? Like you can know the entire future. But that's not how it works. The big problem with trying to predict the future using only statistical modeling is that most of the data you're going to look at doesn't mean anything. For every piece of data that you look at that actually has some sort of predictive value, there's going to be 100 things that don't matter at all. And it's not really that easy to tell what matters and what doesn't. For example, at the end of 2018, everybody was saying, oh, there's going to be a recession soon. And why did they think there was going to be a recession? Because the yield curve was inverted, right? Basically, the returns to a long-term treasury bond, the interest rate was lower than the interest rate for a short-term treasury bond. And everyone was like, oh, you know, the last 5 times that this has happened, there's been a recession. But when you think about it, there are like 100,000 different economic indicators, and so there are going to be a few that happen right before the past 5 recessions just by chance, right? And so that yield curve thing was probably one of them, because there wasn't a recession in 2018. This is why most predictions fail. If you've ever heard some crazy guy going on the news saying, oh, the world's about to end, well, their prediction failed because they were looking at the wrong indicators, right? The people who predicted a recession in 2018 were looking at the wrong indicators. The key to making good predictions is finding the right indicators. Nate Silver calls the numbers that actually have predictive value the signal, and the numbers that don't have any value the noise. And your job as a statistician or forecaster is to figure out what the signal is and basically figure out what's important, what's not important, and get rid of all the noise and only look at the signal. So how do you separate the signal from the noise? Well, one way is just to have lots and lots and lots of data, right? A good example of this is baseball, where there's tons and tons of data. Everything that happens is discrete, and you can identify cause and effect really easily, right? So if the batter gets a lot of hits, then he's probably a good hitter. Now that's different from football, where a wide receiver might have a really good statistical season because he's getting passes thrown to him by a really good quarterback, and because the receiver on the other side is really good, and so teams are putting their best cornerbacks to cover that receiver. In other words, when you have a data-rich environment with very few confounding variables, you can generally find the signal. Another good way to separate signal from noise is to understand the causal mechanism of how the thing you're looking at works, right? So for example, when computer forecasters try and figure out what the weather's going to be, they don't just say like, oh, you know, there are these variables that say there's going to be rain, right? Like when this happens, there's rain 50% of the time. What they do is they build a statistic or like a model of how the weather works, right? They build like every cloud and every little particle into the atmosphere, or they approximate that as best they can. And then they run that a bunch of times and they see like, oh, you know, in 60% of these models, it's raining, so we're going to say there's a 60% chance of rain. Nate Silver also mentions that all the economists who were just looking at statistical trends failed to predict the 2008 recession, but Goldman Sachs chief economist Jan Hatzius actually understood the cause and effect mechanism of how exuberance in the housing market could cause a recession. He was like, yeah, there might be something to worry about here. Understanding theory can help you tell the difference between a relationship that only exists because of random chance and a relationship that actually means something. The long and the short of this book is that if you want to predict something, you can't just throw a bunch of numbers into a computer. You have to throw the right numbers into a computer. Finding those right numbers is really, really hard, sometimes impossible, so you better know what you're doing. So thanks so much for watching Theo's Book Club. If you're new around here, if this is your first time watching, my name's Theo. I make videos like this one going over the big ideas in the books that I read so that you can learn the stuff I learned and so you can decide if you want to read these books for yourself. If you like this video, I hope that you'll hit the like button down there. that tells YouTube, hey, this is a good video, we should show it to more people. I just started this channel, and I've got like, I think 100 subscribers now, so I would greatly appreciate it. Also, you can hit the subscribe button if you want to have these videos pop up in your feed more often, instead of, you know, cat videos or random funny stuff or stuff that you don't learn from. If you enjoyed this video, you should also watch this video, which YouTube picked specifically for you. And until next time, be prepared for anything, and have a great day.